3.
Hello, my name is Joe Byers, and I'm here again with Kalamazoo Earth Day Festival. We have a special guest, Marjory Dietz, who lives in the Parkview Hills neighborhood here in Kalamazoo, and they're doing some really interesting and exciting things over there. So, Marjory, welcome.
Thank you. I actually live in the Cedar Ridge Association, which is one of the associations within Parkview Hills. But there are more people doing what I'm doing in the other associations as well. We were developed as a townhome development, and we're completely wrapped around on 3 sides with a naturalized landscape that separates the townhomes from the public street, but untouched and unmanaged since these were built about 50 years ago. When I moved back to Kalamazoo from Minneapolis, everything looked really overgrown and in fact had been totally full of invasive shrubs and vines and choking the woods, and a lot of the beauty in the area looked really shabby and not good. So that was our lead in, and our association here realized a number of us cared about that condition and unhealth in the woods. And so we've put together a group of volunteers who are taking the invasives out. And we've made a commitment while doing this to maintain the original integrity of a naturalized landscape, but we're wanting, for everything we remove, we want to plant something that will thrive in that same area, that will give us the screening that we've enjoyed. So that's the goal. I just lost Joe's sound.
Oh,
sorry.
That's okay. He was on mute for a second. Here he
I'm
comes.
sorry. Okay,
That's all right.
so what are some positive things that you learned along the way and some of the challenges that you've experienced with your project?
Oh, thank you. The positives are just learning more about the environment and what will thrive and how and where and how they have a symbiosis with each other and the natural wildlife. So learning more and more about plants and doing a different kind of landscaping that I'd ever been involved in before has been wonderful. Some of the largest challenges are that we're dealing with a fairly wooded area and a lot of trees that we want to plant or shrubs, I'll say full sun, and we don't have that. So finding the right location. And then of course, the largest challenge is the deer population, because it is a fairly wooded, wild area. So we would like to balance all of that and get the right things going. So that's the best I can offer on that.
That's great. So what kind of plants and trees are you planting?
Well, in the last 3 years, we've planted bur oak, white pine, Norway pine, hazelnut, black gum, crabapple, catalpa, green giant arborvitae, red cedar, red buds, and river birch in trees. In shrubs, witch hazel, 9-bark, Michigan holly, and there are a number of other dogwoods, Coosa dogwoods, and in ephemerals, we're doing trillium, columbine, jack in the pulpits, May apples, wild strawberries. We've been finding patches of them and moving them around. So this summer along the roadside where we have more sunlight, we're going to throw in a wildflower mix and try and get daisies and a Queen Anne's lace and some things that naturally pop up along the roadside that are pretty, but will take advantage of the sun. So that's the current crop.
That's amazing. All those trees that you mentioned, I learned just recently in the Tom Small book that they're just fantastic for wildlife. Like a bur oak tree supports over 500 different species. So that's really great work.
They're small right now, but we're hoping we can keep them going. Thank
Right.
you.
The next question, I would also love to hear more about this experience of living here years ago and now, and what has changed.
The one thing I notice, and I doubt that it's just Kalamazoo, but it used to be, I recall, and maybe that was just the Girl Scout in me at the time, but when you would drive in the countryside and look into the woods, again, there were all the understories and there was a huge variety of trees and things, but they would, you know, thrive on the type of soil that they were in, but there was a big variety. And now it's almost like a house without good paint on it, or you drive into a neighborhood that's crumbling. The invasives that have moved in, the honeysuckles and the grapevines and the broken things that just seem to choke everything, the Western olives, some of those, they've just made a thick, rundown, like they're choking things out. So I don't see that variety as much. And that's what some of the things we've been planting, we're trying to reestablish. But I also, because of the way the development has happened in the area, the wild areas are not as connected to each other as they were when I grew up here 50 years ago. You know, everyone is, it's like the suburbia cuts off the connections, which is something, if they could figure out a way to connect the wild areas to each other, then it would feel like that would surround the communities in a way that I think is possible to do. So we're looking forward to trying to figure that out.
That's great. Yeah. It's really encouraging, the work that you're doing. So the last question I have for you is, how can people help you and your project and get involved?
Well, we are just hoping to lead by example. And within our association and Parkview Hills as a whole, we just keep publishing what we're trying to get out and what we're trying to plant. And we are open to volunteers if people just want to give us an hour to pull garlic mustard, or if they have a favorite tree or a relative that has some trees that they would like to give us. They can either be a resource or an encouragement factor. I mentioned when I was talking to David before you and I started, Joe, that any people who would have resources that we could share, flyers or pieces of information that we can continue to put out in our community so people get on board. The few things that we have done and have planted now that they've started to thrive have changed a lot of minds. So people are not as nervous about us killing the woods, but encouraging something new. So aged out decorative things that we're doing, replanting with something that's going to, you know, be a nice contrast in both color and health of the rest of the area. Not any one thing. We don't want to relive the Dutch elm disease or what's going on with ash borer, where the whole neighborhood just goes bare. That's not our goal. That's the best I can offer at this point.
Yeah, that's great. So it's kind of the same thing is happening here at my house in the Vine neighborhood. So I am going to put a pollinator garden in this spring, and everybody is just so fascinated with what I'm doing out there. And I've got a little sign. I turned the sign around from like one of the political signs and wrote that I was going to do a wild ones garden. And you wouldn't believe all the people that have stopped and asked questions, and even asking my neighbors, what's this guy doing here? And so, yeah, it is about changing minds and hearts. And it's exciting to do this kind of work. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. And we really appreciate it. And keep up the good work over there.
Well, thank you. We'll try to figure out, as people stop by here, we'll pass the word on what you're doing with Earth Day. And we're just thrilled to be part of it. We really care about our environment. And it's the one thing we can do for the world. We're the Johnny Appleseed of the next generation, I hope.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice meeting you.
You too.